Hello everyone, this is Isaac White from the Crockett Tavern Museum here in Morristown, Tennessee. And in today's episode, we're going to be discussing the story behind the Princess of Pilfering, Barbara Erni. Now, everyone loves a good story of thievery and skullduggery, and that's exactly what we're going to do in today's episode by discussing the tale of the most notorious con woman in history, the Liechtenstein Lady Burglar. Stay tuned. Erni was born to homeless parents in 1743 in Feldkirch, Austria, a small place which sits on the border between Switzerland and Liechtenstein, a small municipality. It didn't take very long for Barbara Erni to go ahead and make the best of her impoverished upbringing. But we see that, according to the records we have available of Barbara and her appearance overall, that she boasted a mop of strawberry blonde hair, which gave her the nickname of the Golden Boo. It was also said, according to legend at least, that she was possessed of a remarkable strength which allowed her to carry either a heavy satchel or a large trunk which she would carry on her back as she tramped throughout the countryside, roaming from inn to inn where she would stay the nights. But it was at these inns that she would tell the landlord that her trunk possessed valuables far too important to be left out in the open in her own personal room. No, she would much rather have it stowed away for safekeeping, and in some cases they would actually stow her belongings away in their very own rooms, which possessed other people's valuables. But regardless of the situation, the typical rule of thumb as it went for Barbara, at least as she would hope, was that the landlord would take her trunk, stow it away in a separate bedroom, and shut the door from the outside, locking it so no one could get in. Well, that sounded, sure enough, pretty tight and locked up, but what they didn't know was that Barbara had a secret. But regardless, innkeeper after hapless innkeeper ended up falling victim to this particular ruse, and the next morning they would wake up to find that not only was Barbara's belongings gone, but so were theirs, and the belongings of others who were staying at their inns for the night. But aside from the valuables that Barbara spirited away, she also had a particular treasure that could not be counted out in worth, at least as far as money goes. We see that in her trunk she either had a small man or a very young child who she would tote around in the trunk, and once the landlord had put that trunk away in those rooms with other people's belongings, then when all was still, all was quiet, that little fella inside the trunk would unlock it from the inside, he'd crawl out, he'd find where the valuables were and rifle through them and find out what was the most valuable. Well, sure enough, once he had made a good haul, he'd store it away into the trunk, and he and Barbara would spirit away those valuables in the middle of the night. Unfortunately, the landlords, they did not see it coming. And so innkeeper after innkeeper fell victim to this simple yet honestly kind of brilliant ruse for its time. And we see that it was terribly effective, although laughably simple, because this happened on a number of occasions, which we'll discuss here in just a moment. Now, Barbara made a pretty good run of it, and in fact would have actually probably gotten away with it if it weren't for the fact that she started living off of the money that she had made from these burglaries. And so, slowly but surely, the authorities began to take notice of this, and they ended up in May of 1784 arresting Barbara and her accomplice and bringing them to trial, wherein Barbara, she pled guilty to 17 separate accounts of burglary. Well, the court, needless to say, found them guilty, and on December 7th, 1784, Barbara and her accomplice were both sentenced to death by beheading. And in that fell moment, when the blade came down, Barbara lost her goldenrod locks. But although she had lost her locks as well as her life, she did gain something in that moment, and that was the title of being the last person executed in the country of Liechtenstein, which, interestingly enough, although this was 1784, there were no other recorded public executions until the year of 1987, when Liechtenstein officially outlawed public execution. Well, folks, that brings about the end of our story for the day. And yes, this one is a little bit brief, certainly a lot shorter than some of the other videos we've done. But I found it interesting during my studies that although she is one of the most notorious con women, she also has very little written about her. I don't know if it was because she was a woman or just people didn't really take note. We don't really know. But either way, I was able to at least find some information and bring this story to you, which I thought was very intriguing, and I thoroughly hope you've enjoyed. And I hope you continue to enjoy what we do here on the channel and continue to follow us on Facebook and YouTube because your support is greatly appreciated. If you haven't already, feel free to like, share, and subscribe, as well as click the bell icon so you'll never miss an upload. But folks, we're going to go ahead and cut this video off for now, and of course we're going to keep more of them coming. But until next week, before I almost forget, just one more thing, sir. And that is, if you would like to come out to the Crockett Tavern Museum and pay us a visit, our hours of operation are Tuesday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m., and our admissions fees are as such: $5 per adult, $4.50 for seniors and veterans, and $1 for children ages 5 through 18. So hopefully you will see you come on out here sometime to pay us a visit and learn the history of Crockett. Also, if you'd like to learn a little bit more history of the time period, stay tuned to our Fun Fact Fridays. And if you want to learn a little bit more about some of the events that we host, then feel free to do so by following us along with our Tours Tuesdays, where we advertise for upcoming events. The first one for the season is going to be May 23rd here on the site of the Crockett Tavern from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. But other than that, I think that is the last of the announcements there, and this concludes the story for the day. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and sign off now by saying this is Isaac White from the Crockett Tavern Museum, saying goodbye and God bless.